Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Our webinar topic is about Ask Me Anything About CROs. It's a really fun topic planned here. My name is Roopa Carpenter. I'm the CRO manager here at Hanapin Marketing, and I'm joined by two very awesome guests today. I'm very excited. We have Joanna Wiebe from Copy Hackers. Hi, Joanna.
Hello, hello.
And we also have Brian Massey with Conversion Science. Hi, Brian.
Howdy.
All right, so a bunch of you sent in a lot of questions to us about CRO, so we're going to try our best to get through as many of them as possible. So why don't we just jump right into it? We have a couple questions about like the CRO program in general, and then some more related to strategy. And then we're going to get to the real fun part. You're going to want to stick around for the latter part of this webinar, because that's when we're really going to look at some of the websites and get some honest real feedback from Brian and Joe. So let's get it started, guys.
Let's.
All right, so our first one here is, oh, this is a good one. It's, what is your dream CRO team? So think about it as like fantasy football, because you two look like you would probably do fantasy football quite a bit here.
Oh, yeah, all the time.
So what would your, I guess, CRO dream team consist of?
Brian
I'll
goes
go first. I'll go first
Oh,
because
okay.
we've had a chance to optimize this. My dream team is going to start with a data scientist, so someone who is good at not spending a lot of time in data, but is good at getting inferences out. They have to be not data geeks. They have to be really good at communicating what they're finding out, and they have to be really good at listening and understanding what's going on with the business. So that's kind of the core, because they're dealing with the tools, they're setting up the study, they're designing any tests that you might be doing, and they're turning data into interesting insights. They should be paired with a really good developer, a front-end developer, somebody who's awesome with JavaScript and HTML and DOM and CSS and understands the intricacies of the strange and confusing browser differences, because this is really the core of the tests that we do when we're optimizing a website. Sitting next to them is a good designer who has the patience to just design what we're asking for and not get all creative-y. We really want someone who can follow specific specs and is patient enough to do little things, little changes. That really is kind of the core fantasy team for optimization, other than maybe a sponsor for the effort who writes the checks.
Amen to all of those things. I'm going to agree with Brian for probably the first and only time in this entire Ask Me Anything. I'm just kidding.
If you start agreeing with me, I'm going to get nervous.
I know, right? So will I. Yeah, so I would say that having worked in a bunch of teams too, like Brian has, there's certain qualities that the best performers on those teams have in common, and it's usually a mindset toward optimizing for paid conversions first, which can be tough if you're in branding and you really want to work on like the stuff that's not directly tied to that. So people on your team are more likely to be on this like fantasy football team, obviously care first and foremost about getting that conversion, which sounds really obvious, but you'd be surprised. But for great CRO, you really need top quality traffic, great traffic coming in, and then you need to be able to nudge that traffic to buy more and to tell their friends.
Or shove them outright.
Or what outright?
Shove them outright. You can nudge them, you can shove them.
I say nudge, I'm trying to be nice. But yeah,
That's
exactly. You want to Brian, easy. We're just getting started here.
Just getting warmed up.
So there are people like a traffic guru, right? Someone who really gets SEO and content marketing, and for that, kind of like a Brian Dean sort of person. Add to that an analytics guru. If we're talking fantasy, I would get into Avinash Kaushik. Then a UX pro, an interaction designer, somebody who thinks about psychology and how people make decisions and then uses that to help shape the page, in tandem with a copywriter who's learning about objections and anxieties and all of that kind of stuff, and of course a designer. So those three people are generally working together with a conversion director overseeing them and kind of like being part of all of these conversations, but really that conversation. And of course, as Brian mentioned, an engineer is someone who can bring that to life. and make sure that there are not bugs when you launch your test, because that can be very problematic.
Yeah,
That's
and I would add, for my team, I would actually, you mentioned the copywriter last or just before the developer. I would move that up because so many of our tests, the winners that we find are in stating the value proposition and how we use the words to communicate the value proposition on a page. Is just that would be the next person on my dream team. Unfortunately, Joanna is too busy for us.
That's haha. It's funny that you're like elevating copywriters as if, I mean, if we're being honest, the first and only person you need is a copywriter. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, the copywriters go haha. No, and I wasn't doing it in order of. I was doing it in like the process to do it. But yeah, anyway, that's my team.
Those are both very great answers. I'll definitely say that. I think the key here is that it's really going to expand across a bunch of different industries. That's really how you're going to make your CRO successful here.
Yes, amen.
So in terms of implementing the CRO process for SMEs, so just to kind of give a little background, in the Netherlands, an SME is a small company that has an annual revenue ranging from 2 to 50 million euros. But in terms of their CRO budget, they only have about 1,000 to 5,000 euros. So what could they do for CRO in that situation?
Well, did you want me to start that one too? You should start.
I do actually.
Do you?
No,
Okay.
this is more. I mean, I will now because you've lobbied it. You've sent it my way.
Oh man, lost it.
I love it. I love it so much. Okay, so I would say that if you have a small budget, and truly, I mean, that doesn't sound like the sort of revenue that would lead to you having a small budget for conversion optimization, but if you did, then I would recommend that you take that budget that you have and apply it to learning. So if you don't have a lot of money, then you have to have time. You don't get to have no time and no money. You have to choose one and go with it. So if you don't have money, then you need to invest time into learning how to do the things that we all do, because everybody you'll see throughout CRO day has learned what they do and then practiced it. So they did the reading, they continue to do the reading, and then they do the practice as well. And so that's really anybody can get to that point if you're willing to invest the time in it, to buy those inexpensive, often, resources and then actually read them or take the course, actually go through with it, and then practice a lot.
Yeah, and it's
Brian?
a golden age right now for tools. We have these inexpensive tools that really tell us all sorts of things about what your visitors are doing. Free Google Analytics, great set of insights on almost any question you would have. Click tracking tools are inexpensive. In fact, you could have an analytics, click tracking software, session recording software, all for much less than 1,000 euros a month. So that's kind of the start of it. But as Joanna said, where are you going to find the time to get up the learning curves and the time to actually sit and be with the data so that you can start making interesting decisions? I think the good news is that you can take some money from, like when we do a site design or an update, we usually pay a lot of money to a designer. I would take some of that money and spend it on those resources or on that time to get familiar with the data, because you'll make much better decisions that way than any designer can make, because if they don't know your audience, they just don't know your audience.
Yeah, so true. So true, Brian.
I'm all about truth.
Well, I think that Hanapin, I mean, our major focus is PPC, but we also do CRO. So, like you said, Brian, kind of leveraging those tools, like PPC, we use analytics all the time. We also try to see how can we definitely use that for CRO. So definitely seeing what tools you're already taking advantage of and how can you use that for CRO. I think it's definitely worthwhile.
Yes.
All right.
Totally.
So now we're going to move on to CRO strategy. So the first question here is, what are the best words to use for call to action on buttons?
I will take this first. Jump right in there. I know, I'm so pushy. So we're actually having a conversation on Ask Me Anything that's going on Inbound right now about button copy. So there's a longer written answer there, but there's quite a few ways to tackle your button. Now, a magic word is usually get, right? If you're looking for a really quick win, that's a magic word to kind of jump to with your test for button copy. But we're also often looking at calls to action versus calls to value. So a call to action is the thing that you're actually going to do, which is rarely a thing that a person came to do, like download free ebook is the thing you're about to do, which is a common call to action. It's not necessarily the value or the outcome that people want. So it's often better for marketing sites and your landing pages in particular to try a call to value where you complete the phrase, I want to blank, and then that blank becomes the button copy. And sometimes that will be long. Sometimes it'll be more than 3 words and it'll make you a little uncomfortable, but we're testing, so it's really worth a test. Brian?
The only thing I would add is actually something I learned from you in one of your presentations is that if you're struggling with what to put on the button, tie it to the headline, which on a landing page is tied to the promise made in your ad or your email. So you've got promise in ad, you come to the landing page, promise kept in headline and copy, and then if there's a form on there, call to action button says you're going to get what we promised. It works very well.
Sweet.
Yeah, I know we've actually done some of that testing too here at Hanapin, where we match the headline with the call to action button. So we're definitely seeing quite a bit of success with that. Joanna, I had a follow-up. What about like personalizing the call to action? So using my or you.
Yeah, definitely. That's a great point. The first person actually does perform really well. I know we've talked about this quite a bit, but like Crazy Egg tested like crazy.
I see what you did there.
The crazy? Do you like that? The crazy? The first email I ever got from Heaton Shaw was, I have a crazy egg idea. And I was like, oh, you're so punny. But no, really, crazy. What was I saying? What the hell was I saying? Now I'm
Crazy
all
egg
distracted
test.
by it. Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Me, you, my.
Show me my heat map was no matter what else they try testing against it, and we ran tests with them on their button as well as other parts of their page, button like it was this massive test. Nothing could beat show me my heat map. So yeah, that's the personalization that you're talking about, Roopa. It's a great test.
Yeah, it's definitely worth trying out and see if it fits.
Yeah, first person. Yeah.
All right, moving on to this is email marketing. I think this is oftentimes a part that's overlooked when people consider CRO. So do you have any tips or studies, cases that you've seen in regards to doing CRO for email remarketing?
For email remarketing specifically?
Email marketing, yeah.
I mean, so the thing that I see most of is people not sending enough email, believe it or not. I know a lot of people are going, oh, really? I get tons of email. But the truth of the matter is, because you get tons of email, you know, if you rely on email, you're subscribing to things so that you're getting in your inbox prompts and reminders and education and stuff like that. But it also means that you're not going to see every email. So one of the first things we like to play with is frequency. And what you can do is, the general rule is this: you can send as often as the value of your email allows. So an example is, I can tell you about a company that's got almost 200 million people on their list, and they send an email every day. Who would that be? Groupon. But Groupon provides a lot of value. They're providing deals every day that people can take advantage of, and that's what people expect. So they get away with it. Plus, they do great copy. They really focus on entertaining emails. So you need to say, can I send more often? If I'm worried about people thinking I'm spamming, I got to dial up the value. Are you providing more value in each of those emails? And the metric that you watch to see if your frequency is maybe going beyond the value of your emails is the opt-out rate. So if you send more often and you start to see an increase in opt-out rates, a significant increase. Don't get nervous about little increases, but a significant increase in opt-out rates, then maybe you need to either dial up the value or you can dial back the frequency. But the money is in the list, even today, even online. The money is in your list, and is working. So
it is, and I'd agree totally. I think that subscribers can smell fear. So If you are tentative or hesitant, or you come off like, I'm only going to send once every 2 weeks because I'm scared, they can tell. The more confident you are with your email marketing, the better it performs. And yeah, you're going to see unsubscribes, right? I have a friend, Brennan Dunn, who sells courses online, and I won't reveal his numbers, but he just did a really phenomenal course launch. Huge results, but also, you get opt-outs. You get people who send you emails that say you're selling too hard, but they have an option. They can unsubscribe, and businesses can't actually exist without VC funding or making money. And of course, VCs eventually want you to make money too. So you need to use email. So stop being afraid. Send lots. Test frequency, like Brian was saying. Also, test your opt-in bait. We've done a lot of testing of our opt-in bait, and we found, to our surprise, that one thing, our persuasion guide, outperformed our free 4-part crash course in copywriting, which was really shocking to us. But then it also indicates the type of content that your list is likely to want from you when you send those newsletters. So if you're like, well, what are you talking about? Send things that are valuable. What's valuable to them? Well, they'll tell you that with, oh, sorry, my cat likes to show up for these things, with whatever they sign up for. If they signed up for a persuasion guide, they probably want to hear a lot more about how people make decisions online. So that kind of stuff. And then, of course, do send great stuff so that you do train people to want to open your emails and to actually open them. And when it comes time to sell, they're probably more likely to sell because they've come to trust you and you've built a relationship with them. And that leads me to my final thing, which is our 3-to-1 rule. So it's a ratio of, for every 3 emails of value that you send, of free value, you're allowed to send 1 sales email. So if you have a 7-part sales email campaign that you want to do, you should probably put in about 21 valuable emails before you start doing this thing where you're selling hard with a huge, aggressive campaign. But we like to follow the 3-to-1 ratio for value to sales.
And I might disagree a little bit with that. I like to sell in every email, even if I'm providing value and mentioning it. You can always tie valuable in your email back to something that you're trying to get people to do. But
I think you're always moving. You're always moving toward a point of selling, but I think a lot of people feel uncomfortable. If you feel good, like Ben Settle, right? He sells in every single email he sends, and he sends one every day. And if you feel confident with that, like, fill your boots, go to town, do it. But if you don't, and I hear a lot from people who are like, oh, I just want to achieve balance. I don't want people to kind of be justified in hating on me. So if that's how you feel, which so many people I talk to do, as long as you're still allowing yourself the ability to sell, where you said, well, I put in my 3 freebies for you, I gave you 3 really high value things, I should be allowed to pitch you with something else that I believe is valuable to you, given that you've opted in. But it's whatever makes you feel comfortable, as long as you are using your list.
Yeah, and somebody has to tweet that subscribers can smell fear. That's my big takeaway from this. I love that.
Yeah, and I think the other takeaway is that really there's more than one way of approaching it, so definitely test it out. Really. That's what CRO is about.
Amen. Yes. And if in doubt, do what I say, not what Brian says.
Oh, unless you want to sell something.
Real. Oh, really?
No, that was total bombastery, folks. Listen to her.
That's it.
Well, I'd actually like to get some follow-up feedback. If you guys do try out the different methods, let us know how it turns out for you. So moving on to our next question here, what can a brand do to show trustworthiness on a landing page?
We test a bunch of different things to build trust. The best thing you can do is keep your promise. So whatever brought them to that page, keep that promise. But there's some visual things that you can use. So we test things like whether or not we put the logo in a prominent place on the website. Everybody's like, oh, we should put our website on it, our logo on everything, but that's not necessarily true. Your logo has the specific job of building trust. You can borrow trust from other entities too. So if you're a member of associations, if you won any awards, the Better Business Bureau logo still works on for local businesses and local websites for us. Those are great to put on the site. client logos. They don't have to be necessarily recognizable client logos, but it tells people that, oh, these companies have used the service, and I guess they're happy with it if they've got their logo here. And then if you're doing e-commerce, go ahead and put the Visa, MasterCard, American Express, Discover, those badges on the page. All of this is really what you're doing is borrowing trust from other better-known entities, or building up trust from other potentially trustworthy sites like your clients. And you've got to be careful because just like walking onto a used car lot and talking to the sales guy, the 10th time he says trust me, that's when you start distrusting him. Why does he keep saying that? So you don't want to overload this sort of thing, and especially visually, if you've got all these logos and things, it can really detract from the visual hierarchy and getting people to act on the button. You want to add something, Joanna?
I do, and I think that it's true everything you've said about borrowing that credibility, right? Like other people have said that we're safe, so trust us, we're safe. And of course, that's how humans behave. Tons of principles from herd behavior to imitation. All of these things, social proof is based on this idea, right? That we depend on the opinions of others to make sure we're doing the right thing. But that's for other people. Then there comes the part where you're yourself, where you're a human being who's landed on a page after having come from another place. And that's where we're trying to make sure you know that, yes, you are at the right place. And that's what message matching can accomplish. So message matching is really, what were you on? What did you click to get to the new landing page that you're on? Or how did you really get there? And does the message match what you expected based on what happened before that? So that can be a big part. If you don't have good message matching is good for everything, right? It's just a very good practice, but it does help with that trustworthiness where you can say, okay, well, not only are other people saying that this is a good site, it looks credible, it's got the logo in the right place, it looks credible, but also I feel good about it because the message that I saw is matched here on the page. I believe I've landed at the right place. I'm less likely to bounce.
And Roopa, let me make a real quick comment. I think there's some noise on your end because the screen keeps switching back to you, back and forth between you and Joanna, and we love to see you, but I think it's a little bit distracting. So you may want to mute while she's talking. And if you can mute her, that would be even better. No, I'm just kidding.
Ah ha ha! That's it. Mute him. It's over. He's off.
We'll try to work on that on our end. Definitely, we'd like to see
okay.
Faces instead of seeing me just sit here and listening to you, to the both of you. But I definitely agree on the whole branding side of it. We have one of our clients is a car dealership, and when we did usability study, a lot of people pointed and said, yeah, it's a very trustable site because they see the Mazda logo and all the other logos. So we definitely see that, and we always definitely preach on message match as well. We have the benefit of getting to see the PPC ad copy since we do PPC here, and so that's one of the first things we look at to say, okay, what's the ad copy, what's the keyword they're looking at, and how is that relating to the landing page? So definitely two very good points there.
Awesome.
So the next one here, I like this question. So heat mapping is a widely used tool, but oftentimes companies lack the understanding on how to make sense of the data. So are there any common signs of problems or things that you would kind of utilize one of those tools to kind of parse the data, I guess?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I'm jumping in. You just
jump in. Go ahead.
So I recommend, well, my favorite part of heat maps, really, and I think of Crazy Egg because I use that most, is attention mapping. Because click tracking is good, and I'm sure, Brian, you'll have something to say about that. But for me,
I'm sure it's good.
Well, you'll figure something out to say about it. No, because we do a lot of copy tests, and a lot of times I'm recommending more copy, not less, we end up using the attention mapping or really scroll mapping to see where things get cool on the page, what pieces of content or blocks of content aren't getting much attention. And when you use that, you can perform better exclusion tests. So you can say, okay, well, it doesn't look like people are looking at this section of the page, so we should test a version of it or variation that has that out and see if it impacts conversion at all. And we did that with Crazy Egg, which I'm talking about a lot in this session for some reason.
Lucky
But
them.
we did, right? Aw. We did that, and we found, the cool sections, because they had you'll probably remember this very long page that they used to have, which was well tested and all that jazz, but optimization never ends, so we kept testing it, or we tested over it. And we put Crazy Egg on the Crazy Egg homepage and saw cool sections of it, this very long page, and so I visualized snapping those closed, and that's really what we did. We made new variations that removed those cold areas, and we saw a lift. So that's a great thing to do if you're wondering, well, what parts of the page aren't people paying attention to, and is that impacting conversion? Brian?
Yeah, we love it when we go into the analytics for a site. When we find a problem page, the first thing we do is we want to turn to the click tracking to see if we can figure out what's going on. Some of the things that we look for are people clicking on things that aren't clickable, icons, images, things that you want to be visual cues, but people will click on them, and is there an opportunity to turn that into a link that you can have them follow? And also seeing, like in a navigation scenario, you should see them clicking most on the left or on the top of your navigation, be it across the top or down one of the sides. But a lot of times you'll see people clicking on things further over. That might be a clue that you could increase the conversion rate by moving those to the left or moving those to the top and making it more obvious that option is available to people that are visiting. And then look for outliers, things that just don't make sense. We had a client that people were clicking on one field in a form, and there was a form on every page, and we saw this on every single page. They weren't finishing the form, and they were just clicking on this one field. And it turned out to be the list of areas of interest is what it was called for a college. That's what they were looking for. They were just trying to find somewhere on the site a list of what majors this college offered. So we were able to pull that out, integrate it into the site, and had a great lift on that one. So it's like we were talking about in the first question. You need to give yourself a little time to do this. Spend some time in it, looking at it, and trying to understand why things are why people are doing what they're doing, because they're baffling crazy people, these visitors.
They really are.
Yeah, definitely. We use Crazy Egg here all the time, and I think one other function that I like is right when you open the screenshot, you have in the top right that ability to compare mobile and desktop. If you we had a client here, it was a rehab client actually, and we noticed that the form was getting a lot of attention, and so maybe your thought is, okay, maybe that's a lot of desktop. When we did the compare feature, what we noticed it was actually all mobile that was actually clicking on it, and so then when you go to your mobile phone and see the experience, well, the form is the first thing you see instead of the phone number. So that gave us some great insight where if we hadn't done the side-by-side comparison, we probably wouldn't have seen that. So just another thing. Different things we can do with Crazy.
Yeah. The more you play around, right, the more all of the pieces come together. I love it, yeah.
Absolutely. All right, here. So moving on to the next question. What is the correct budget that you should, I guess, set aside for CRO testing?
$1 million a
month. Hey, we both gave the same answer.
We finally agree on something. I can't believe it.
The world is gonna implode now. We agree.
Actually, we have a report we generate. It's called the Upside Calculator, and if you want to just look at the dollars and cents, after you start into CRO, you're going to continue for a lot of other reasons. But if you just want to look at the dollars and cents, you need to understand what a small change in your conversion rate or revenue per visit, if you're an e-commerce site, what kind of upside you get from small changes. So if I increase things by 10%, what is my annual increase in pocket change? More accurately, you want to look at how much more profit you would develop, and then that gives you an idea of what the upside is. So if you say, well, we could make $200,000 more with a 10% increase, yeah, I'm willing to spend $10,000, $20,000, $50,000, $100,000, half of that on conversion optimization. It helps you understand that. And you can scale the conversion optimization to almost any budget. Get the tools and learn yourself, like we talked about before, or hire awesome, smart people like Joanna and me, and pay a little bit more.
Yeah, no, and I think that in a lot of cases, if you don't have enough traffic, you don't have enough traffic. So you need to get more traffic. It'd be great if conversion optimization also brought you more traffic, but there are times that you do need to just, like when you're starting out, and blah, 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 it can, right? We could stretch it and say, well, there are times when it can. But that's not its purpose, is to get you more traffic. But you do need it, right? If you're going to grow your business, you really need to get more people to your site. So sometimes the first thing you should do is invest more in growing traffic to your site, which can mean content marketing and social media marketing, which should all be measurable anyway and leading in some way to a conversion. But it might not be the case that testing is right for small businesses. Now, Google experiments offers, or did offer at least like 2 months ago. You never know with them though, right? What's going to change? But multi-arm bandit testing, which is supposed to be good for people with lower traffic because of the way it distributes traffic to the trending winner. So you should be able to complete a test sooner with fewer visitors and conversions. But it's not a silver bullet. It hasn't solved that, and it's been around forever, and still clearly problems with it. So, yeah, that's my sad news: is invest in SEO, get PPC, and content marketing, and all the things that bring people to your site, so that you can actually run a test.
But I will say this to take
Don't
the
argue
opposite
with
direction. You know, if you do have the traffic coming, that is one of the places you might consider borrowing budget from, is your paid. Your advertising budget to work on CRO. You don't want to borrow so much that your traffic goes down below a measurable amount, but increase your conversion rate and then start investing more in advertising. So that's another
back
area
and forth, right? Like, which comes first? And that's really, I mean, hopefully they're both happening at the same time, right? You're increasing conversion, you're increasing traffic, and it's all just like going up. But it's not going to be, work hard on getting your traffic way the hell up and then start lifting your conversion rate, right? They should both be kind of happening in tandem.
Ideally,
this makes sense, doesn't it? This makes sense when I do this? Not really.
Are you dancing?
To me, this is my dance, my conversion growth dance. No.
You rock.
Long day.
Yeah, yes. I won't say more about that.
Okay.
All right, we'll leave it at that for that part. We're going to move on to the real fun part of our webinar. We're going to look at some screenshots of landing pages, and we'll just really ask for your honest and brutal feedback for it.
Love it.
All right, so the first one that we have coming up here, it's basically in regards to pricing plans, and the questions are basically, how many pricing plans should you offer on a page? And then basically, are there any ways to go about improving them?
Totally. I'll just jump in with a totally.
Are we going to actually see the pages?
Yeah, can you show it? We can't see it. I mean, I have a link to it back here somewhere. Is it possible or no?
We should just look at that. That's really interesting.
Wow, the part with the thing?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and the headline and the button.
How to get that to do that. Wow.
Okay, well, I have seen it, and I will open it in another tab.
I think we've got it. So if we click on this one, for those in the audience, if you click on that in the Hangout, it will come front and center, and you won't have to look at Joanna anymore or me.
Get to look at.
Get to. Sorry.
That's right.
Now we're looking. Now we see the tunnel of the time tunnel.
Oh boy, I feel.
There we go. Ooh, ah.
Woo! Okay, so the real question was around how many products to have on a page, right? And it's different for SaaS versus catalogs and all that kind of stuff that you would do for e-commerce. But for plans and pricing, for anything really, we do come down, and I did my master's research project on this exact topic, so that's
really?
Very fancy. Oh, I know.
I'm all ears.
I know. So were the people who had to read my research. They're
all asleep.
They're like, just pass her, just get her out of here. No, so the way people make decisions are, of course, in decision sets, right? So we move everything down. Having one option, Brian just disappeared. Having one option is rarely good for conversion, but it's not easy to make a decision when you only have one option in front of you. Having 2 or 3 is phenomenal because with 2 we can easily contrast, and with 3 we can eliminate and contrast. And that's all part of getting to a point where you feel confident making a decision. So very basic ways that we work, which I think a lot of people have probably read about with contrast effect, right, is this idea that we need to see more than one option, but not so many options. And no matter how many options we have, to a point, we're always trying to get things down to a decision set or a group of approximately 3. And then within those 3, we want one thing to be unattractive and the other 2 to be comparable.
Yeah. Dan Ariely wrote about this. Yeah.
This is the way, right? There's so many studies on this. But it is, if you're going to look for an ideal group, and that's where even right down to your pricing. So when you think about the 2 things that your prospect is likely to consider, the 2 options that they're looking at, trying to make it very clear between those 2. One has to be easy to eliminate for the average person. So good. Now they feel good that they've eliminated one. They're looking at 2. Those things have to be really easy to compare, and there has to be clear distinctions between them so you can just choose one and feel confident. And it's really, I mean, that's kind of a high-level view of it, but it's a good starting point when you're working on a pricing page.
Yeah, it is about help me choose. A lot of times, especially with software companies, you get into what I call feature pizza, where you're slicing the features, trying to figure out how to slice them so that there's enough features that you can charge a little bit more for. And what you end up with is 3 or 4 or sometimes even more choices where the differences you can't really bite into. I think the next page shows a pretty long list of features on here. Maybe I was wrong about that. I think that was maybe a page I was looking at. But a lot of times you'll see these 3 columns or 4 columns, and it'll have 2 scrolls worth of features with all checks across the space, and that's not going to work. Pricing pages are kind of wrapped around really your value proposition for each of these things. But some things to test are cutting out the number of things you list as features. Use your copy to talk about what the features and benefits are, and use the table to help people choose. I would absolutely test some of the things that Joanna was just talking about, where you're essentially clustering, like making one thing, the thing that's maybe the most profitable for you or most popular, look like it's really like an unbelievable value, and one of them falls off. And test putting your most expensive one on the left. I keep seeing people telling me that they've done tests where putting the highest price item on the left anchors the value of the service, and then they say, oh, and there's also one that I can afford. So
yeah, and that can sometimes decrease your conversion rate itself, but increase your average order value, which is obviously good for the business.
Yeah.
Yeah, I interrupted you. Sorry, Brian.
I think I was done. You didn't interrupt me. Nice try.
Maybe on the next one there, huh? So why don't we look at the next site here? I believe this is for Darcy Ripper, I believe. There isn't any real specific question, so just your honest, brutal feedback.
Just rip into Darcy Ripper. All right,
well, they make their value statement at the top, so we get an idea of what they're doing. So I was able to look at this page and understand what they were doing visually. There might be I wanted to know what they were doing because I'm evaluating this page. I think there's probably a treatment of that headline that makes it easier to understand what they do. Maybe break this up into a larger headline and a subheadline, something like that. And Joanna, I'm interested to hear, because this is a real common trend. Let's put some arbitrary icon next to a paragraph and see if that helps people consume the page better. Have you found anything? Is this working? Because I see this all the time now.
Yeah, everybody's doing it, and it's like they've all seen a heat map that shows that eyes go to things like that are like images, so we better put our message next to an image. Right, it's all worth testing. If it's irrelevant, then it's irrelevant, right? And people start, when you're foraging for information, you're trying to find it, distractions are frustrating. And so if you are distracted by an icon that is unrelated and not helpful to you, then you're actually interrupted now in your foraging process. So how do you actually get what you were looking for. So and problematic also is when things are all equally weighted, which they kind of are here, right? Where we see this six-part grid with the 3 rows, or the 2 rows of 3 columns, which I'm looking at just in small here, by the way. And then more below it. So when things are equally weighted, it's really hard to know what to look at first. And then we fall into old patterns like F pattern, right? Where we're like, okay, well, I'll just take the closest thing in the top left and kind of look over and kind of look down. And the guy over here in the grid 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 over in number 6 isn't seeing anything, right? So you might as well not put anything there at all, because no one's looking that far when it's all equally weighted. So it's really a matter of trying to figure out what your prospects need to hear, and then not being afraid to spend some time on the page blocking that out for them and helping them get that information when they need it, and not just saying, well, and we're going to see this, I think, on a few pages where there's a sense of trying to squish everything into a little area because you're terrified that someone's not going to scroll, which is like this holdover from like 5 years ago. Someone spread this rumor that nobody scrolls, and it feels like that's gone away.
Wait a minute,
but
you can
still
scroll?
Kind of lives. Yeah, there's like this mouse, and it lets you scroll. I know. No, but yeah, so anyways, the point is, let your copy breathe and organize things in such a way that people might actually stand a chance of looking at them and consuming what you're writing, because how the hell else are they going to know if you're right for them?
Yeah. And I want to make a comment about images. So there's a section here called screenshots, and it shows screenshots. Every image should have a caption. Captions get read. Captions are a great place to repeat the value proposition, the offer that's on the page. So what right now, left to my own devices, I think these screenshots say, oh, this is really hard to learn. It's going to take me a long time to use. What am I supposed to get from that picture? I mean, put a caption on it like, look, we have lots of rows of things. This will help you. Whatever. Explain to the visitor what they're supposed to be getting from the screenshot or for the image. And this is going to confound some of you guys that like to use stock images on your pages, because it's really hard to write a caption for a pretty person smiling at the camera that doesn't work for your company and isn't a customer.
What, you just wrote it. Brian, you just wrote a perfect caption for that.
That is. My favorite one is the shaking hands. You see those a lot. The caption for that is always, we want to shake your hand so you can start sending us checks. That's
exactly
what that means.
Exactly.
So I think if you're going to use screenshots, focus on a particular feature on the screen and then explain what it means in a caption, and you'll be doing much better.
And don't be afraid of repeating a message that you already have elsewhere on the page. Some people are like, well, I already said what's in the screenshot, so why would I put it on the screenshot? Well, repetition is actually a pretty good thing when it comes to trying to get people to remember your message. So that's just a side note about captions.
Have we sliced this one up enough?
I know, right? What else can we do to it?
I think there's some really
Who's next? Fresh meat.
All right, the next one here, we got home mode experts. And there's no specific question here, so you guys can just take it away.
Well, you remember what I said about the used car sales guy and too much trust me, trust me, trust me? That's what we've got going on here. So they've got a lot of these trust symbols. They got customer emblems. They've got associations they're a member of. They've got pictures of their team there. And just like Joanna said about the last one, I don't know what's most important on this page. The call to action button is there in the heading, and it's small, it's insignificant, and it looks like it's just one of the other elements on the page. So there's a reason that you'll see on a lot of pages that people will grayscale logos and things that they use to help build trust on it. It is specifically so that those don't compete with the things that are higher up in the hierarchy. And from a conversion standpoint, that's usually the headline and the call to action button. Those are the things you really want to be at the top of the hierarchy, because the page has to say, we're asking you to do something.
Yeah, and I'd add that this page, it's a home page, and I really hope it's not being used as a landing page. I'm very hopeful about that. If it is, obviously, all of the stuff in the header, the navigation there, needs to go. It's all very distracting, especially with the icons, right? Because your eye does go to it, can't help it, evolved that way. But it makes you look at things that maybe you didn't come here to look at. Now, if it's actually acting as a home page, okay. If it's acting as a landing page, that's tragic then. Also, when we get into the form, it's extraordinarily long, and that's not necessarily a bad thing because you can get more qualified people completing it. But you might want to, when we see required fields versus not required fields, there's like really no reason to fill in a not required field. So I'd wonder how many people are filling in those other fields. And if they're not necessary, can you put them on, you have a next button here. I assume there's a next part of this process, which the button copy we need to discuss anyway. But can you not break this form up? Try to make it a little easier and less work for people to get into what you want them to do. So ask those 3 required questions, take the other 4 off, move them to the next part of the sign-up process, and then you can remove that all fields are mandatory nonsense, which never feels good to be told I have to do something on like it's mandatory. Well, what do you mean? You don't get to own me, right? For people who don't like to be controlled.
I got your mandatory. It's called the back button.
Exactly, right? So get rid of those asterisks, which just feel like demanding, and then you can just have these 3 things. And if they don't fill it out, right, then you have an error message, right, that says, oh, please complete this, and so on and so forth. Now, we don't want to get there, but if we have only 3 fields, then perhaps it's less likely that they'll need to see that error message. I don't know what the get a free assessment within the next 24 hours with a arrow pointing to how soon do you need a loan. I don't know what it's doing. I think the arrow is meant to just point to the form, but it appears to be pointing to a certain field to complete, which is frustrating. And then when we get into, I'll stop at this point, but when we get into these 4 things down the middle where there's the 4 icons on the leftmost column, and then there's all those icons for the logos for the companies, I didn't even realize these were clickable. And they look like little quotes off to the side. So I'm a little unclear. Like there's visual cues.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. Brian, what'd you do?
My plan worked. Now it's all me. Oh, and she was doing so well. Yeah, I don't know what those are either. So I'll channel her, and she'll say, "Oh, she was done. She was done." Okay, hopefully she'll be back in a minute.
Well, we can move on to the next one. You can basically give your critique.
Yeah, let's do.
We have Beth.
Ooh, so the thing I'll point out here is, you see these repeated Google Trusted Store and Veterinarian Trusted badges. The reason we're seeing this is because these are sticky. So you've obviously seen things that stick no matter how much scrolling you do. And that is something actually that's worth testing. Sometimes if you have a trust symbol that works, you can actually make it sticky in the lower right or lower left of the page, and can actually get another bump in conversion rate or a revenue per visit on your site. So I think that this is also a home page. The opening headline, is that right?
Let's see here. This is serving as a landing page. So really, one of the questions we want to know are, what are some of the best practices for a landing page for an unknown brand, essentially? What could they do there?
Okay. So look how the treatment for the headline is done. Treatment for dog ear infections is placed in something that looks like a header or a nav bar. This gets skipped. So we're going to go for the highest contrast items on the page, and right now dog ear infections, more than just a nuisance, that's going to be the first thing that I see probably after the logo. So these sorts of treatments for your headlines don't work, and you could probably just take that whole color bar and everything off, and move your message up a little bit. When you're laying out text, you don't want these long lines. We don't want a wide site, especially in multi-line paragraphs. I get to the end of the line, and then my eye has to go all the way back and find what line I was on before. Fortunately, these aren't big blocks of paragraph text, but let's bring those together. This is technically what we would call a sales letter style. So good persuasive copywriters know how to make this work. And it does require a certain skill where you create interest with a headline, you create an urgency to read with the subheadline, and then the first paragraph starts a story, and that unfolds so that you can start talking about the benefit feature proof sandwich. And Joanna is back. She's going to be much better at talking about these sorts of things. But when you look at this page, it's designed to be read from top to bottom, which these things are. But even in a sales letter format, you need to be using bulleting. You need to be using strong subheadlines that can be scanned easily. Go ahead and use highlighting and things like that. Because if I scan through, I should be able to get the primary gists of the page, and then I can either start at the top and read through, or I can pick the sections that interest me or that are most important to the problem that I feel I have, and dive in. Doing sales letter style landing pages is in itself an art. I'm not. I've got tens of thousands of hours of writing, and I don't feel qualified to do it because it's really a particular art form. Joanna, you want to add to that or refute me?
Yeah. No, I will not actually refute you on that. They're very tough to get right, but it's not that this is so far off, right? I think that there are some good things that you could do. I don't know that long form copy is right for the product. You're not demonstrating it in any way. I don't know that pictures would be that compelling here because they're so off-putting that they might make people feel really bad to see pictures of, like, just reading that subhead with all the things that can go wrong with an ear infection. Nobody wants to see that before and after. It could lead to a really, like, visceral response, where people are like, oh, that's exactly what it looks like, and oh, I want it to look better than that.
We have a client that's in the genital warts area. You can imagine how difficult it is to pick images for that.
Oh, Brian. Every time I feel okay about you, you like go and say something that just gets me. I know. Anyway, I'm just kidding. But no, it's true, right? And when we're talking about also for long form, it tends to work really well for miracle cures. I don't know that this has to fit into the miracle cure space, and also for expensive products. And when I scroll down the page, it's not actually that expensive. It's nothing more than what you would expect to pay to treat a dog ear. I think it was $29.95 or something, some sort of infection, which seems really reasonable to get rid of that. So do you need a long-form sales page to overcome objections, especially around when we get to the point of the close with pricing? There's really not much of an objection, I would say, there. So I would test short copy that's well designed against this. Also, like Brian said, you have crossheads in here, which Brian mentioned as subheads. In the sales world, right, we call them crossheads, and you just pop them in the middle, make them bold and big, and that's all you have to do is those italicized headlines that you have off to the side, put them in the middle. Those are your crossheads. And then, like Brian was saying, a scanner recognizes that they're on a long-form sales page, whether they like it or not, and tends to scroll down and then scroll back up and decide what they're going to do. And those crossheads can help them feel good about having consumed information and understanding by the time they get to the bottom a bit more about the solution, so they're more likely to go back up to the top and actually read. So those are the things that I would do. And one other point, there's a point at which you introduce the product, but you don't ever say that in a crosshead, so it just kind of happens. And that is, I would say, a big fix you could quickly make, is just that line, the crosshead that introduces the product.
And is it bad that I've been doing this for over 20 years and this is the first time I've ever heard the term crosshead?
It would be bad if you'd been writing them for 20 years. Then we'd have a problem here.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
I'm not hanging out with the right people, obviously. I think you made that word up just to make me feel insignificant.
I did. That's what I do. That's what I do.
Well, great stuff. Great feedback on that site there. So we're going to try to get through two more pages here.
Okay.
So the next one is for the company's American Nationwide Mortgage. Basically, they're looking for suggestions on how to decrease bounce rate.
Can I jump in? I have 3 quick things. I won't take long with it.
Yeah.
One, if it's about bounce rate, to me, when I landed here, I thought it was some sort of thing for veterans or something. I didn't get, like, it looks like it's for veterans with the flag and the 2 older people and, like, the coloring of the whole page. I don't know. I questioned it quickly. So bounce, that could be hurting things. You don't know if that's true, but to me it feels yes, like it would be. Then you have 5 costly mistakes. followed by this 7-point list, and I'm unclear on what's going on there, so it starts to feel like work. Do those need to be 7 points, or can you not just do bullet points or check marks, or even better, instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7? And then all of that mice type, or whatever the hell that is down below there, it's terrifying.
The website is used for the primary purpose of eliciting phone.
Yeah, right.
This must be legalese.
It's awful. It looks like scary mice type. So scrap that, or find a way to. I know you have to, for legal purposes, have it in there. But if you need to have as much mice type on the page as you have copy, then you probably need a different strategy.
And so I'm going to talk about some of the things that I think are good on this, and things that you should copy, because I think you nailed the things that I would have talked about as a disadvantage. But so on a landing page, you want to make sure that you're showing the product, and even if you have something that's delivered as a PDF or something that's delivered digitally, even if it's videos, go ahead and render it so I can imagine owning it, and B, you can communicate things with an image, like how many pages it is, how thick it is, by how thick the image is. So good that they put a picture of the item on the page like that. I like that everything on this page talks about the offer itself, and not about, they're not going into what a reverse mortgage is and why it's important. It's really talking about what's in the report, which is into the product. So it's got a very simple form to get. I'm only asking what I need. It's got a little risk reversal, and when you're generating leads, your privacy policy is, or your promise not to spam is really your risk reversal. The button really needs to jump, and it needs much better call to action. Go should say, get my report, get my free report, get my report instantly, something like that. So I think that this has all the elements on it. It just needs a designer to come in and really make the stuff readable.
All right, we got.
And get rid of the lawyerese.
Got some great stuff there. This is our final one. We only got 3 minutes left. This is for Nickel Bros. And there's no particular question here, so just honest feedback.
Okay.
Nickel Bras. House lifting. Oh, they steal houses? This is awesome. Is that like, is house jacking like where you rear end somebody's house and then make them get out and steal it? What? Is this different?
What world do you live in?
I live in a dangerous neighborhood, as you might guess.
I guess so.
You want to take a dive at this one?
Sure. For me, when I looked at it, a few things, right? So you have quality recycled homes as your tagline, which I actually did find myself looking at quickly, because it's large, and it's not common that I would look at a tagline and even like think about it at all. I usually, and I think a lot of people just go right past those, but it's very large. So I saw quality recycled homes, and then I went and looked at the images, and it looks like, oh, okay, so they take ugly old homes, they do something with them, and then they produce better looking homes. And that's not what you're actually selling, right? This is, I think the URL even says house lifting. This is all about house lifting, about taking a house from one place and moving it to another, and or just lifting the house up. So one, I have to decide which one is it. Are you talking about moving a house, or just lifting it so the basement is bigger and better and there's more room to do things? It's really unclear what that's about. So for one, I'm kind of torn, because I think at first blush that this is something to do with renovating a house, which might not be quite right for me if I'm looking for house lifting services. And then the quantity of copy on here, and I'm a copywriter, I'm a fan of copy, but only as many words as are necessary to get the job done, and this is just a lot happening here. Your goal on a landing page like this is to put copy on the page that will get them to do the thing that you want them to do, which is, opt in to hear more. And flood protection, smarter than moving, you want more space. Those are all good things. Do they need to read that much about them in order to fill in the form? That's the goal. You have to start with the goal of the page, which is get them to fill in the contact form, and then only put on the page what they need to see in order to feel confident about contacting you guys in particular to do this job that they need done. So I just think that the copy that's supporting it is there's too much of it, and it's not necessarily related to the goal of the page. Brian?
Yeah, and I'm trying to read what's on the button there. What does it say?
House moving.
House
Oh
moving.
wait,
Not.
that's like a separate button, and then there's of course the
Oh,
beautiful submit
submit.
button.
I see. I see.
Submit.
So house moving. Yeah, it's too small for me to read this. One thing I want to point out is they spend a lot of time convincing someone that they need to move or lift or jack their house. I suspect that the people who are coming and looking for this sort of thing already have an idea, and that these could be bullets to your point about do we really need to write about those things, and talk and start talking about more what the next level of objections might be. Is this cheaper than building a house? Is it significantly cheaper than building a house? Uh, Whatever the next, is it dangerous? Is there a danger that my house will be ruined? Will it crack the walls and things like, the kind of the next phase of things. I bring this up because a lot of marketers they want to start where the visitor is, but they overdo it in terms of like convincing them that they need the product, when a lot of these landing pages are really bringing people that already get it, and just they want that next level of things. Notice that there's no navigation on this. Sometimes when you subtract navigation, you'll actually decrease the conversion rate on a landing page. There's a trust issue there. If you want to build trust, having a phone number big and showing tells people that you're a real company. So they do that here, and they put it in the right place. If you really want the phone to ring, you should put that phone number in the headline. And I think that's really all that I've got, and I think I'm out of time. Anyway.
Indeed.
Yes, actually, you got that right. Well, we got through all those live pages, so that's great. Brian, Joanna, I just want to thank you very much for taking the time to participate in the webinar today, and I want to thank all of our listeners for listening through, and hopefully you got some great key takeaways for your own website or for your client's website. If you have any feedback, feel free to email us at marketing@hanapinmarketing.com. I hope all of you have a great day.
And go ahead and, if you've got comments or if you found this helpful, tweet about it with the CRO Day, #CRO Day, and give us some feedback.
Sounds good. Thanks, everyone.
Joanna, great to see you again.
Oh, always, Brian, always.